Yes people, welcome back to another video. It's CMDAV and I got another banger for you. We're doing the Sian Diamond story time today. I enjoy doing the story times. I haven't done one in a minute, but we're getting back to it. Gonna do more. Here we go. Also a little shout out for Amelia Hills. Let me know if you want to see a video, I'll make it happen. Let's get into the vid. We first see Sian in episode 11 of the second part of season 7. We first see her in a car with her husband Jez, seeming very happily married and loved up. Michael approaches them and they have a conversation about their honeymoon. Sian says it was fine while Jez goes on to say it was amazing, blah blah blah. Sian meets everyone in the staff room and Michael introduces Sian with her maiden name rather than her married name, signifying their history. Michael says she's one of the best science teachers in the country. Sian offers to go to court with Michael, but he says it's not necessary since it should be smooth sailing. Sian doesn't believe his bluff and says they never worked on her. It's only episode 11 and the camera panning in just emphasizes the sexual tension and history between these two that we're gonna learn more about. Sian says she has a free period, so Michael has no excuses to say no. Jez catches Sian and Michael leaving the school and asks where she's going. Jez tries to say you're going to hold his hand, but Sian says it's fine. This right here is a look of a man that is not fine. In episode 12, Sian and Jez are planning to have a dinner party for the teachers. Jez's ex-wife and kids pull up. Jez's daughter Maddie sees Sian for the first time and she's not having it and she calls her a slapper. To keep things normal, Sian and Jez ask for Maddie and Zach to be enrolled. When Jez is already gone, whilst leaving the office, Michael says to Sian if she needs anything, he's got her. Later on, Maddie confronts Sian again saying that she stole her dad. Maddie paints the word homewrecker on Sian's classroom window. Maddie says now everyone knows the truth. Sian is holding back the tears, telling her she didn't take her dad away from her. Maddie's not even trying to hear it and she calls her a lie and then slaps her. In episode 13, at the end of the episode, after everyone leaves, Michael and Sian are still in the office. Michael pulls a nightcap for her and holds her hand. He says he should have never left her. Sian says she never likes whiskey and she dips quick. In episode 14, Michael apologizes to Sian about being rude to Jez earlier and still means what he said in the last episode. Sian sees Vicky's face and thinks Ronan hit her. Sian then tells Michael and then asks Maddie if she knows anything. Maddie don't even like Sian and she likes Ronan, so she's gonna take his side anyways. Sian sees a credit card in Maddie's hand and realizes it's their joint card and takes it and goes to Jez. He goes to Jez about some beauty clinic purchases and Jez actually admits it was him. In the toilet, Sian starts to tell Linda about Jez getting Botox done. Linda starts to ask about Michael because she likes him and Sian brushes it off saying she doesn't know anything about him. Sian confronts Vicky and Ronan. Vicky is saying that Ronan didn't hit her, but Sian isn't listening and suggests they should speak separately. Ronan's not having it because he's saying he hasn't actually done anything. During the rugby match, Vicky tells everyone that Ronan didn't touch her. Little side note, this is one of my favourite episodes. At the end of the episode, Sian finally apologises to Ronan about jumping to conclusion. In episode 15, Jez asks Sian to bump up Zach's grades for parents' evening. Sian isn't happy about this and saying that he's got a track record in cheating, because at the end of the rugby match he cheated, which allowed Waterloo Road to win. Sian goes into Michael's office about parents' evening and the students not being happy with their grades. Michael asks if everything is okay between them. Later on, Michael goes to Sian's classroom and their conversation is interrupted by Linda. In the office, Linda tells Sian that her mystery man was Michael. Sian is obviously shocked and looking a bit jealous. At the end of the episode again, everyone has gone and it's just Michael and Sian in the office. Michael asks about her and Jez as they seem tense. Sian is surprised that he was able to notice anyone else's love life, a little dig at him being with Linda the other night. Michael says she seems unhappy about it and Michael claps back saying that they're two consenting adults and they can do whatever they want. He asks if she's jealous and she tries to act cool. They get closer and they kiss before Sian says she should go. In episode 16, Sian tells Michael they shouldn't have kissed and it was wrong of them. Michael asks Sian to speak to Linda about the budget. Sian realizes it's because he doesn't want to be around Linda because she's acting obsessed, clingy, if you don't miss me, miss me. Maddie is comforted by Sian after asking whether Finn will be alright. She shook up after being robbed in the morning and a reminder from Tarek's brew on Finn. Back in Michael's office again, Sian is saying Michael is right about Jez as he doesn't get everything. Michael says not to be too harsh. Michael says Sian keeps denying it, but there's something between the two of them. They move close and they start to kiss again, this time for longer. In episode 17, Jez is telling Sian about recreating their first day whilst Michael watches on. Sian isn't for it as she says it's late notice. Sian flirts with Michael and they agree to see each other later that night. Jez asks Sian again and now she says she can't and reschedules for the weekend. Tom is angry asking why he's got a TA. He says he's the invisible man. For their senior leadership team is Michael as the head teacher, Sian and Tom as the deputy, but as Sian is favoured because of the things that are going on between Sian and Michael, obviously Tom is not getting a look in. Sian bumps into Michael who says later on they should go back to his place. Jez, who's making all the wrong moves, surprises Sian with bikes for the weekend and Sian gets vexed saying it's not the right time as it's literally during the school day during lunchtime. Jez apologises to Sian and brings her lunch. Sian also apologises for storming off. Jez asks what's wrong and she says she's got a lot on. They start to bond when talking about swimming with sharks. This changes Sian's mind and she says she'll make sure she's not working late that night, which means no cheating again. Sian tells Michael they have to stop since she has a family. Michael says he's not playing games and he doesn't want to let her go. Regardless, Sian is not hearing it and she says it's over. However, at the end of the episode, Sian goes to Michael's yard. She says she can't go on with Jez and she wants to be with Michael. They're hugging at the front door while Linda is lurking from far watching. In episode 18, Linda tells Sian about seeing her and Michael, which then Sian tells Michael about this. Sian plans to have dinner with Jez, but after Michael's meltdown, she postpones and lies saying that her uni friend got dumped. Sian goes into Michael's office, who's shook up after seeing a bouquet which says R.I.P. Michael. He finally tells her about the stalking and Sian comforts him saying that he can trust her. Then Michael says he loves her. She didn't say back though. In episode 19, at the start of the episode, we see Sian and Michael waking up in bed together, panicking that they overslept. Jez walks into Sian's office and says her standards are slipping. She's thinking he knows, but he's just talking about her lateness. He starts to ask about her uni friend. She says she's all fine and they're still on for dinner tonight. Maddie has really turned her attitude towards Sian around since episode 12. She says she looks amazing even in the same clothes as the night before. Jez says Sian's got Michael wrapped around her finger because he made her coffee. Sian says it's an act of kindness and asks what he's implying. He says he's not implying anything, but if anything, his gut feeling seems to be a little bit extra confirmed. Later on within the episode, Michael gives Tom and Sian a bollocking about the bullying situation with Andy. Tom sticks up for himself and says he alerted Sian, yet she didn't do anything, which Sian admits. When Tom leaves the room, Michael apologizes to Sian for shouting at them both and says they need to be treated the same way. Sian says her man's been on going to break up with Jez. Janice walks into Michael comforting Sian, thinking something fishy is going on. Jez goes to Sian's classroom and asks to have a word and they go outside. Jez asks for Sian to be straight with him about everything. Sian says she doesn't want to do this here, but she's not really getting a choice. Jez is not having it at all and saying that they need to be honest with each other. He says they can get through it. Jez says you were with Michael last night. Sian nods her head whilst crying. Jez breaks down into tears and demands her to tell him it was just unfinished work business and that's it. Jez then storms off after realizing and knowing it wasn't just work business. Sian goes into Michael's office and tells him Jez knows everything. Michael already knows it because he got his lip bust up. Michael sends her home to be with the kids and goes on to say she should move in sooner than later. At the end of the episode, Zach is asking where Jez is and Sian is saying she doesn't know. Maddie suggests they will just meet him at the restaurant later. Episode 20, the final part of the second part of season 7. Zach is still asking about where Jez is. Sian is saying she'll call him. Sian walks into the gossip of the staff room as Jez is still missing. During the staff meeting, Jez walks into the staff room. He says he's back for his kids and his stuff. Matt asks if he's leaving and Jez says he doesn't have much choice since his boss is shagging his wife. Sian goes after Jez. She asks where he's going to take the kids and he tells her she's not their mum and she's not his wife anymore. Tom goes into his old deputy office to collect his things as he gave his resignation as a deputy. Sian apologizes about Jez being caught up in all of it, but Tom's got no sympathy at all. Michael is seen comforting Sian, asking if she's okay by Maddie. When Sian sees Maddie, she tells her to stay away from her. As Jez, Maddie and Zach are leaving, Sian runs to them to try to stop them. She asks when they're coming back and apologizes for how things went. They leave with Sian crying. Sian bumps into Wayne, who drags her into a classroom. After that altercation, Sian runs over to the port to go get Jez and the kids back. Jez isn't trying to listen, but Zach makes him. Sian says she couldn't see what she had right in front of her. Jez said she could, but it wasn't what she wanted. She claims confusion, but Jez thinks it was always about Michael deep down. But he decides to give her another chance, wrapping the end of the second part of season 7. Episode 21 is the start of the new term. Sian, Maddie, Zach and Jez arrive to school together, but it's clear that there's still tension between Sian and Maddie as she doesn't forgive her for cheating on her dad with Michael. Sian is taking over as head teacher since Michael is still recovering from getting run over. Whilst giving the debrief, she's interrupted by Linda, who runs in late saying she stopped by Michael's house. Michael returns back to school and everyone thinks Jez ran him over. Sian tells him to call the gym to get CCTV footage. Jez wasn't really on it, but Sian calls the gym and finds out when he was in the gym, but she finds out he wasn't at the gym at all. At the end of the episode, Sian confronts Jez about it. She says she called the gym. Jez admits he went to Janice's flat. He basically admits what happens when he was drunk and saying that he went to her flat to apologize to her. Sian then apologizes about the mess and her cheating again. In episode 22, nothing happens much on Sian's part, but she tries to be on Maddie's good books by helping her with her campaign to be head girl, but Maddie really isn't interested. Sian even offers a spa day to Maddie and Maddie gets vexed. Jez later on says to Sian that he wants to have a kid. Sian is flabbergasted and she's not saying that she's saying no, but she says she wants to talk it through. At the end of the episode, Sian apologizes to Maddie. She tries to bond with her and she makes some progress. Jez asks about the babies again and suggests they start making babies. When Jez goes, Sian says she'll catch up, and when he leaves, she takes a pill to prevent her from getting pregnant. Mad thing. In episode 26, Jez gives Sian a pregnancy test to do and is excited. Sian puts water onto the test and shows Jez the negative result. Jez is confused as to why it's not happening. He starts to consider going private and getting a fertility test, but Sian says no, not to force it. At the end of the episode, Sian tells Jez she's not sure whether she wants the marriage to work out and she tells him she lied about trying to get pregnant. In episode 27, Jez says he's going to move out to sort things out. Sian comforts Trudy with her pregnancy situation, but this also allows her to reflect on her own situation that she had with Jez. In episode 28, Jez is annoyed with Maddie having a girls' night for her 18th birthday and wasn't invited since he moved out. Sian says she's not bad-mouthing him, but he doesn't believe her since he's not there to witness it. Sian and Jez agree that the best thing to do is for Jez to move away and to be closer to Maddie and Zach's mum. In episode 30, Sian agrees to take the job in Scotland. She tells Zach and Maddie since they're moving back in with their mum and says she still wants to see them in the holidays. Into season A, where we're in Scotland now. Episode 1 is where Sian goes to the schoolhouse to tell Tarek about the news about the drunk driver who paralysed him and killed Denzel. Sian's also looking for options for Tarek and suggests for him to do canoeing and people can help him in. In episode 2, Sian gets slapped up by Lula during Denzel's memorial service. Sian confronts her for not only being bad since she's been at Waterloo Road, but because it was during Denzel's service. She asks Lula how does she think her parents would react, and Lula says her dad is dead. Sian said they didn't know that, while Lula goes on to say the school is stupid and the people commemorating Denzel are stupid as they won't bring him back. At the end of this episode, Maddie surprises Sian with all her things. Sian asks what's she doing here and Maddie says she came to visit. In episode 3, Sian isn't really on going to a charity event which Lorraine asks her to be her +1 to. She changes her mind later and says yes. She does a sweep of the newspaper articles and gives them to Michael, but she's annoyed because he lied to her, saying that he fell out with his dad during a Christmas argument. In reality, Michael tried to kill his dad. Sian finds out Maddie is planning to have a party while she's out and tells her it's not happening. Maddie convinces her to have it. At the end of the episode, Michael apologizes for not telling Sian. He explains he doesn't feel any guilt or remorse, while Sian says he must feel something. He says he only regrets not finishing the job. He says what he did doesn't make him a monster. Sian is shocked and says she'll have to take his word on that. In episode 4, Sian walks into the staff room and defends the allegation against Michael, saying he has his reasons whatever they were. Michael apologizes to Sian for not telling her, but she brushes him off. Sian tells Michael to speak to his dad to get the record straight, but he refuses. Sian then visits Michael's dad and asks for his help. Sian goes with Michael's dad to the pub to confront Gerard. Sian returns to the school with Michael's dad and Michael doesn't look pleased at all. Sian stops Michael and asks whether he deserves at least a thank you, but Michael says his dad doesn't deserve anything. At the end of the episode, Sian goes to visit Michael's dad and apologizes about Michael's behaviour. In the next episode, Sian is late and Michael is waiting in the office. He's asking why she was late and she says that she was visiting his dad. Sian passes over the request from Michael's dad that he wants to see his son, but Michael isn't having it and says some relationships aren't worth fixing. Sian gives Maddie advice about boys, telling her to carry on being nice. She suggests they do a girls' night. Sian visits Michael's dad at the end of the episode and he's expecting Michael too. Michael's dad tells Sian he's dying. He gives her his dying wish, asking to see Michael without Michael knowing that he's dying. In episode 6, Sian is wondering whether Michael has had a chance to see his dad. Michael says they both know the answer, which is no. Sian tries to say it's been years and they're both different people. Michael says his dad has got to Sian and that he's a bully. Sian tells Michael's dad that he needs to tell Michael, but he's refusing. Sian is getting annoyed at both of their stubbornness, and at the end of the episode, Sian tells Michael about his dad dying. Michael gets angry and tells her to back off, but Sian calls him a bully as well. In episode 7, Maddie surprises Sian with the rest of her things coming. Sian isn't excited since she wasn't expecting her to fully move in, but she says they can talk about it later. Lorraine hints Sian has a man, which she doesn't deny. Maddie goes to Sian whilst Sian is looking at a man through the door. Maddie is telling Sian she's applying for uni to get out of Sian's way, but Sian seems unbothered and distracted. Maddie thinks she just wants her out of her hair. The guy catches Sian looking at her and it looks like they know each other. Ray comes outside and tells Maddie to go back inside. It's Sian's new man and they even share a kiss. Her man Ray is saying that Maddie's a handful, but Sian doesn't claim her and says she's one of many difficult kids to look after. Sian goes to lunch with Ray while Maddie calls during the lunch day and asks for her to meet up since she thinks she's messed things up. Sian pies her off and says she can't, and Ray starts to speak and Maddie picks up the voice and realizes it's not in the canteen. Maddie asks who she's with and Sian lies and says Tom. Maddie calls Sian asking her to help with her luggage and she says she will help her load it in a taxi. Shortly after this, Sian walks into Maddie kissing Ray. She asks what's going on here. Ray tries to defend himself saying Maddie kissed him, but Sian says he didn't stop her. Maddie introduces Sian as a stepmom, but Ray is confused since Sian says she lives alone. Sian deeps it and realizes Maddie knew she was coming and tells her to get out of her sight. Now with just Ray and Sian in the room, Sian tells him he should have known better because he's a grown man and Maddie's a schoolgirl, and she tells him it's over. Sian goes to the schoolhouse and tells Maddie she just spoke to her mum and something happened between Maddie and Maddie's mum's boyfriend. Sian says it's dysfunctional trying to use sex as a weapon. Sian says she's not her mother and she doesn't want to be. Maddie cries and says she doesn't want to move out, but Sian's saying that she's literally doing everything opposite, making Sian want to make her move out. Maddie says she doesn't want to lose everyone. Later on, Sian tells Lorraine about Ray's antics and advises her to get rid like she did. In episode 8, Maddie tells Sian about being accepted on a cruise ship job. Maddie thinks school is a waste of her time and she's annoyed with Sian's judgments and says it's her life at the end of the day. Sian is happy that Michael is going to see his dad and she's still pushing for Maddie to take the educational route rather than going to take this job on the cruise ship. Sian's even excited when she sees that Maddie got an A in English. More times it wasn't a real aid because Con had done the marking. Maddie and Sian keep arguing about the job, and Maddie says that she's taking the job and there's nothing Sian can do about it. Sian calls her a 12-year-old and tells her to grow up. Maddie asks how can she do that if she's sponging off her for the rest of her life. They finally apologise to each other, and Maddie says she thinks she's doing the right thing. Sian says she should do whatever she thinks she's right, and they hug it out. At the end of the episode, Maddie and Sian leave together happily. In episode 9, at the end of the episode, Michael tells Sian that his dad asked him to help him kill himself. Sian isn't for it because he could change his mind at any time, and the fact that it's illegal. In episode 10, Michael is arrested and Sian and Lorraine argue about it. Lorraine is on Michael's side while Sian says Michael killed his dad. In episode 11, Sian gets a call from a lawyer or something. They're telling her that if the case with Michael and his dad goes to trial, she'll have to testify against him. In the next episode, Michael gives a debrief and says if his case goes to trial, he'll resign. Lorraine asks if Sian has thought about what happens if Michael goes to trial. Sian says Michael's already said that he's going to resign. But Lorraine's talking about in terms of replacing him. She asks whether she'll be thinking about it. Sian says that they're not there yet and they should wait before anything. Lorraine just says that she wants continuity, so it'll either be her or Tom. In episode 14, Audrey, who's panicking, runs into Sian and asks for her help. Audrey tells her it's Christine. They go into Christine's classroom and Audrey tells Sian that she's been drinking and she tells her to get to the nursing station. She's going to tell Michael. Christine begs for Sian not to tell Michael, but Sian says she's on probation and she's had enough warnings. Sian storms into Michael's office to tell him that Christine brought alcohol into school and drank beer. Michael says he'll deal with it. Sian goes on to say she's really disturbed and doesn't care about anything. She even reminds him she's on probation and they have a duty of care to the pupils. Michael asks if she's questioning his professional judgment and she says he's thrown it out the window. Sian knows they're involved and says if she's not dismissed after this, then everyone knows why. In episode 15, Sian tells Michael about Christine drinking in school and he has to address it. Sian is instructing Nikki to keep Barry in check and to keep him focused so he's not causing trouble with his sisters. Later on in the episode, Sian and Nikki confront Barry while Sian is also blaming Nikki as well. Sian asks Barry to own up for making the weed brownies. Barry plays the innocent card, but Sian says they both know he has something to do with it. He says it couldn't have been him because they had him on surveillance the whole day. The next episode we saw Sian onto Barry again when she asked him to do the chairs, but he made Kevin do it instead. Barry plays it off and says he went to the toilet. Sian gives Barry extra homework and asks whether it's an extra problem. Barry says it is a problem, but Sian also says because he did a great job on the chairs, she volunteered Barry to make tea for the PRU meeting later after school. He says he's visiting his dad in prison tonight. Sian says he's sure he'll understand. Barry slams the door and gets in Sian's face. He says no one messes with his family and she needs to understand that. In episode 17, Barry is excited to do the presentation, but Sian says it's better if he spends the afternoon with Audrey. She says he's lucky to even be in school after stealing Bolton's gun, and Sian says no arguments. Later on in the episode, Sian gets a visit from Barry and apologizes about not letting him do the presentation since he proved her wrong. Barry says that's the first time someone has ever said anything good about him before in school. I think that's him trying to flirt. Sian says to keep on track and she likes the new Barry. In episode 18, Sian approaches Barry and asks to have a quick word. She tells him that he's made good progress to be taken off special measures so they'll see less of each other. But then Sian finds out Barry has been taking bets for the football match. Rhiannon tells Sian he's scamming everyone and taking money only if they put money on Waterloo Road to win. Sian tells Rhiannon to go inside and she tells Barry to hand over the money and the bets, but Barry says she doesn't want to do this. She tells him he's back on special measures and he has to report to her again. Sian and other teachers walk in on Barry attacking Casey and putting makeup on her since she thinks she's a boy. In the cooler, Sian says the school will support Casey however they can and will do the same for Barry. Barry says it's his sister and not some freak. Sian says that kind of language is not helping anyone. Barry says he's not going to act like everything's alright and if she actually wants to be a boy, she might as well be dead. Barry says Sian doesn't know him, but she says she knows he's a desperate boy trying to prove he's a man, but his behaviour proves the opposite. Barry gets a bit angry and asks, "What do you think, I'm not a man?" He stands up and says, "I'm a boy, am I?" He walks over to Sian and gets in her face and says, "I'm a boy to you." Sian crumbles under pressure and says she's kept him long enough in the cooler and tells him he can go. At the end of the episode, Sian gets home and Barry is seen following her, still angry about that boy comment. The final episode of the Sian saga. This one was a hefty episode, a lot happened. We start off where we left off. Barry successfully breaks into Sian's yard without her noticing. While Sian is in the shower, Barry goes into her drawers, sees a photo of her and Michael and takes it. He also steals a pair of underwear and leaves the drawer open. When Sian gets out of the shower, she sees the drawer open but doesn't think too much of it. Sian walks into Michael's office and sees that Christine and Michael are back together. When Christine leaves, Sian tells Michael that the psychologist who wanted to see the Barry is cancelled. Sian asks to take the session, but Michael says she's not trained in family therapy. Sian says she's done counselling before and Casey really needs the support. She goes on to say that it took a lot of persuasion to get their mum, Carol, to get involved and she thinks she can turn Barry around too. Michael doesn't want to get too close to Barry. Sian welcomes the Barrys and notices Casey's new look. Carol is trying to get the meeting over and done with ASAP. Barry and Carol are onto Sian because they think she's telling her how to raise her kids. Sian says she wants to hear from Casey. Casey lashes out but no one's listening. Carol says this is a waste of time. Sian says this is a chance for them to discuss their issues as a family and get the support they need. But the meeting ends up with no one getting anywhere. After the meeting, Zoe goes to ask Sian about Casey and what happened in the meeting. Barry then approaches Sian and asks if Zoe is trying to turn Sian into a lesbian too. He asks whether her boyfriend will be jealous. Sian is shocked and confused. She says her personal life has nothing to do with this. Barry claps back saying that she wants to know all of his family business. Sian explains it's to provide support and give them the tools they need. Barry makes a sexual innuendo saying that he's got all the tool he needs, making Sian uncomfortable and leaving. Barry then gets the picture that he stole earlier and starts planning something mad. Later on, Sian is talking to Michael looking for another way to get through to the Barry since the meeting didn't work. They come across a bunch of kids hovering around the notice board and there's a picture of Michael and Sian kissing which has been printed around the school. Sian says it was Barry. Michael says he'll go get him from the PRU, but Sian said they don't have any proof. Sian goes to the PRU to get Barry later on and he says that she's trying to get him on his own. Sian says what he did was criminal as he broke into her house, but she doesn't have any proof. Barry keeps denying it and Sian calls him immature and it triggers him. Sian says he might be a hero to his friends, but to her he's just a little schoolboy who can't keep his hormones in check. Barry says that Sian's turning him on. He says, "Come on, no one can see us." Sian says it's time he learnt a lesson and orders him to go to her classroom. In the classroom, Sian says Barry's taking over the lesson since he's got a lot to say. Barry says he was just joking though, but Sian isn't having it at all. She says they can listen to all his penis jokes and listen to an immature little boy make a fool of himself. It seems that Barry has crumbled. He whispers, "Why are you being like this?" He brings out the underwear and says, "You're being dead nice when I took this off you this morning." He throws the underwear at her and she slaps him immediately, but then immediately regretting it and runs away. She goes to Michael's office and tells him she hit Barry. She admits Barry got to her. Michael says he has to suspend her since she assaulted him, but Sian pleads saying that if she goes, Barry wins. In the foyer, Barry asks everyone to admit what Sian did, but everyone says it wasn't Sian and it was them instead. Christine confronts Sian asking if something is going on since Michael stands by her even though she broke one of the golden rules. Sian confronts Michael saying that their relationship clouded his judgment. He said regardless it's not that deep since the kids spoke up for her, but she doesn't want the kids to lie for her. Sian says she's resigning. Michael isn't having it and says he needs her to stay. Sian says it's the right thing to do. At the end of the episode, Sian says to Christine she was right and she has resigned. She admits she used their relationship to get her out of a jam. She advises Christine to not let what happened today destroy her relationship with Michael. Tom asks if she's going to say her goodbyes in the staff room, but she says she doesn't really feel like she belongs. Tom says she'll always belong. She apologizes and they hug. Carol storms into school when Sian admits she hit Barry. They go into the office and finally make progress. Sian apologizes if they thought she was interfering since she just wanted to help. Sian says her final goodbyes to Tom, Michael and Lorraine and drives off. She stops for a second whilst Michael looks on, but she carries on and leaves for good. That is the end of the video. I enjoyed doing this one a lot. Let me know what you think of the video. Make sure you leave a like, make sure you subscribe and make sure you comment if you want to see a certain video and I'll make sure I get that done. Stay safe my people. Peace.